Today, Humankind game received its December patch update, likely the last one of the year, and on my channel I already have an update breakdown video if you want to get the full lowdown of the patch notes. However, here today I want to show you the biggest change of all. These are the important changes and additions. Essentially, it's improved AI, improved combat, and improved personas and events. However, this line in particular is the one that you want to watch. Lines of sight in combat. It might not seem like a lot, but also couple it with military strategic planning changes, how the AI handles its armies, its reinforcements, and overall how it fights, and you'll discover that while this December update was not the most beefiest of update, in fact, it's probably the most stripped back, significant game update we've had since Humankind released, but actually it's got a real doozy of a change that really changes the way we fight in Humankind. Let's jump in and talk about it, and here, in slow motion, I want to show you exactly what it is. You can see that when I select a unit, I get two things. Firstly, these little white dots show me where I can move in a turn. A wonderful change to the user interface. Secondly, and more importantly, particularly for archers, take a look at these borders that are appearing. Whenever I move my archer, I receive those borders, and that shows me which units are within my line of sight. It's a basic change to the UI, but there are actually a few different layers to it. So let me show you a few different examples from land, sea, and air, and talk through a little bit about how this change plays out, what it means, and the broader changes to militarism in Humankind, because I think this update's changed it a fair bit. So here you can see, and I zoomed in to show you it in detail, but here you can see a siege where I'm actually defending a city. And while this new update, the new UI, works with melee units, like the swordsman here that you can see, it really works best with the archer. Look at that. You can see all of the units, or all of the tiles, where my archers or melee units can hit, and crucially, if I select a different spot to move to, you can see that play out as well. It is fundamentally important, less so of course for the melee units. Not a lot has really changed for them. It's the same UI, but for ranged units, it's a big deal. And of course, naval units haven't been left out of this either. Here's a very basic example. I'll show you a more detailed one later. Take a look. You can see the same user interface that we've experienced before has been brought through and reinforced through in the naval combat as well. Again, here with these basic boats, you might not see a big difference, but watch as we transition through here, you'll start to see a big difference play out. However, one more thing that I wanted to note just quickly is that it doesn't look like some of the other combat UIs. Some of the other things we can do with our units have changed. For example, here's the bombard, the artillery strike function. You can see that that hasn't changed at all. Although, actually, if I zoom in on the post-match, maybe a slight difference here. I'm not sure, because I haven't done a lot of artillery strikes, but there you go. Let's now move into the meat of this video, and let me show you what a combined siege looks like, and an example of a situation where I think the new changes to the way that the line of sight feedback works in battle really plays out. Here, with boats. This is the best example. You could pretend like these were also land units with 4 range, it doesn't matter. All of the later game units, whether they're boats or land, tend to have 3, 4, maybe even up to 6 or 8 range for the likes of the Chinese Guardian. Up until now, it has been difficult to maneuver these units. Mainly because it wasn't always clear what would be restricting your line of sight. In Humankind, there are lots of different things. It could be the geography, in a really straightforward way like a hill, or a less obvious way, maybe forested land. Other interactions for line of sight include other units in the way, friendly or enemy units. That's a big one, and it's hard to read and judge, but here you can see it's made easy. It's made easy for boats and land units. When I select my unit and go to move it, as I hover over the tiles I can move to, you can see all of the enemies are highlighted with a red border. That means that they will be within my line of sight when I move to the selected tile. It's massive, and it makes these naval sieges where you're using some of the later game units from about the Karak onwards. Once you start to get the gunner platform function, you start to have more than one range, it could get really confusing, and now you can see it is not. It's super easy to use. This is the way it should have been from the start, I absolutely believe. However, it is wonderful to see it playing out now, and it really does make manual fighting in Humankind much more enjoyable. I'll show you some more examples now as we move through into the rest of the video. But I think really I wouldn't be doing these changes justice unless I don't also talk about the other improvements and changes that we saw to combat in this patch. As you will know if you've seen my full patch notes breakdown video where I go through all of the patch notes, or at least the key findings from each section, you'll know that there weren't really any changes to cultures, or broader changes to, say, unit movements or strengths, or any of those attributes in this patch. However, as I mentioned at the start of this video, and in that video, there were big changes to the AI. The AI has been changed a lot, and the thing about AI changes is we don't quite know just how it's changed in the patch notes. Take a look again here, battle number 2, reinforcing that same point and really also romping the power of naval units home. I love me a good naval fight, but back to the AI. In this patch, they improved 5 broad categories of the AI, and at least 3 of them will impact your combat, one of them, of course, super directly. Firstly, pollution management and fame gathering. 2 things. Next up, the 2 that will slightly impact combat: diplomatic relations and alliance creation, and territory claiming. It's not explicitly fighting, but you can see how that could relate to combat. But finally, and the big one, they improved the AI's military strategic planning. This basically, as far as I can tell, and as far as I'm reading into it, also by the ellipses that they put in the patch notes, this is basically everything. This is the AI's military strategic planning mind. They didn't note any exceptions, so I'm going to assume not. What did they put exactly? Well, army management, reinforcement, bombing, disembarking, and then ... in ellipses, implying, of course, the list goes on. More, too many to mention. In my experience, and of course, this is relatively limited experience, I've played 2 full games since the patch comes out, and I'll be sure to play more on stream this week. By the way, if you didn't see my streaming schedule at the start of the video, I've got a very special week again planned this week, especially on Friday, big 10-hour stream. But anyway, I think that in my testing, it's shown to be a relative improvement. The AI seemed to be a little bit better at what they were doing. Their embarkment in particular, I found it more difficult to bait them into positions where they would leave their units vulnerable, and they seem to be also better at not pushing stupidly to take a flag. Are they perfect? No. But in general, I think that they've improved a lot. However, it has to be said, the most significant improvement of not only this video of everything that I've covered, but also this patch update in general, the Humankind December update, has to be those improvements to the line of sight. The UI is great, very easy to use. Now get out there and shoot some English longbowmen, and I'll see you next time. Take care, everybody, and bye-bye.